So I read this article the other day called "The New Fight Over Raw Milk Explained," and it led me down a really interesting rabbit hole that I wanted to share with you.
Milk it does, yeah. Milk it does the body good. Milk does the body good. Pass it on.
Well, Mr. Miller told me he never drinks milk. Look at him.
Yeah.
Hi, kids. Oh, that's not good.
Gut milk.
So are you more likely to drink raw milk or 10-day-old piss?
I don't want pass.
All I can say is that since I'm here last year, I only drink raw milk.
As it currently stands, schools participating in the National School Lunch Program are only able to offer students low or non-fat milk options. That was changed during the Obama administration. A lot of people disagreed with it at the time. With this legislation, schools will finally be able to expand their offerings to include nutritious whole milk.
You most likely already know about the government's influence in the dairy industry with the cheese mountain and all the chaos from that, but as an extension of that, there's this weird obsession with milk in our culture. As milk consumption declined in the 80s, Big Milk started putting out ad campaigns, many of which you may have seen, some of which I played in the intro, from It Makes a Body Grow campaign to the Got Milk campaign. These advertisements were everywhere. Everyone has seen one of them. Even now, there are currently ad campaigns for milk. These campaigns aren't tied to any brand. They're just advertising the idea of milk. Now, this has been going on for a long time, and I'm sure you know about it. But now there seems to be a struggle brewing. Vegans and climate activists have often pushed back against cows in general, saying that industrial cattle farming has caused a significant increase of greenhouse gases and has caused global warming. And simultaneously, there's a larger push from the citizens of the United States of America to be able to get their food and the things they eat from more natural and more healthy sources. The United States has a lot less regulations than many other countries about food specifically because they want to bolster the agricultural industry and because it's a capitalist country. So these corporations want to be able to make as much money as they possibly can. That means oftentimes the American citizens get stuck with unhealthy foods without really much of an alternative. RFK Jr. in the lead up to the second Trump administration advocated frequently for the consumption of raw milk versus the currently available products. Raw milk is banned for sale across state lines and is entirely unavailable for human consumption in many states. This is because raw milk, much like chicken, can contain harmful bacteria such as Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, and many others. With this push towards raw milk and the greater Make America Healthy Again movement, it has gained a lot of attention in the media. I think a lot of people want a better option. They hear things like, oh, we need raw milk, not this ultra-processed stuff we have now, and they agree. I'm one of those people. Until researching this video, I advocated pretty heavily for raw milk, but with some research, it's a lot more interesting than what you might think. Depending on where you stand on this topic, you might wonder why anybody would want to drink raw milk in the first place. But the advocates for raw milk generally just want something healthier. The idea is that the less processed, the better. If it's been touched by less hands, it's healthier. Meaning that if you get it right from the source, it's going to be the healthiest version of it. They claim that it promotes a healthier gut biome and that it can even cure lactose intolerance. And you might not understand the distrust of the milk industry, but there's not a lot to trust. You got big corporations that make lots of money from the production of milk, and the government has their hands in it, which the government is never trustworthy. There have been studies done on both sides of the aisle, and studies aren't trustworthy. Scientific studies are funded by people who have an interest in getting a result that they want to get. And the general population is not going to be able to see the difference between a good study and a poor study conducted simply to find a specific result. So the automatic assumption is that every study is bad, that they're all flawed, which is a safer bet than just assuming every study is totally truthful. The vast majority of scientific studies, even if they're funded by people with a vested interest in the outcome, still have some things that are valuable within them, but you've got to be able to see what parts are valuable, and if you can't tell, then you can't tell. On top of that, scientific studies are generally posted in journals, they're hidden behind paywalls, they're hard to find without spending money. The average person who's trying to be more health conscious and advocating for things that are better for your health, in their opinion, aren't going to extensively research a topic. I mean, most people aren't going to extensively research a topic, even if it's something that they're advocating heavily for. They're assuming that there are people who are higher up than them, who have more money than them, who have been advocating longer than them, that have researched these topics. And in many cases there are, but not in every case. And people don't have time to dig through studies and to consider things. And when it comes to milk specifically, it's even more complicated than that, because it's not just about one specific thing. Milk undergoes multiple processes before it reaches the shelf, and you have to decide which of those processes you think are good and which of those processes you think are bad. And at a certain point, it's easier to get milk in its raw, pure form than it is to get the specific type of processing that you think is the best. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but the main thing I want to get across is that people are awfully aggressive towards anybody with an opinion that's different than theirs. And it's good to criticize people you disagree with, and it's good to be criticized by people you disagree with, but if there's no understanding of the other idea, then it's all just kind of pointless. The people who advocate for raw milk are simply trying to make people healthier. They don't trust the government, they don't trust the scientists, but they do trust that nature is healthy. They look at the milk from the store and it isn't even close to its natural form other than it's white and it's a liquid. It tastes different, the consistency is different, the cream doesn't separate. It's a lot different of a product than raw milk, and they want something more natural because natural is healthy. There's also an environmentalist argument at hand, but it's more about cows in general, not just the dairy industry. Here's this article called "Why What We Eat is Still a Major Cause of the Climate Crisis." It opens with "Meat is murder, but not only of animals." This article talks about red meat and the effect it has on the environment, but not really. It says global food production is responsible for around 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, according to a damning new report by the Eat Lancet Commission accusing humanity of failing to address a critical issue in the climate crisis. The consumption of red meat not only poses long-term cancer risk, but also contributes significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. During digestion, animals like cows, sheep, and deer produce large amounts of methane, a potent greenhouse gas. According to the report, 53% of non-CO2 greenhouse gases from agriculture come from ruminants. If people worldwide adopted healthier diets, emissions from the food sector could be reduced by 15%. Now, this is interesting specifically because that's a lot of qualifications there, in my opinion. 53% of non-CO2 greenhouse gases from agriculture come from ruminants. We're just narrowing it down, you know what I mean? But that's basically all this actually says in regards to how it's affecting the environment, is they are releasing methane, a potent greenhouse gas. It doesn't really get into what this means. So like it said, during a ruminant's digestive cycle, they release methane. This is released into the atmosphere. It's a greenhouse gas. It contributes to warming. The thing is that this is a natural cycle. It's part of the natural carbon cycle, right? They eat food, plants, which absorb CO2, and then they digest it, releasing methane into the atmosphere. Methane has a significantly shorter warming period than CO2, and if we killed all the cows, it would only take a handful of years before the warming effects from the cows would go away entirely. And it's not really offering a solution other than we need to eat less meat and we need to cut back on growing cows, which these are messages that people can't get behind. This isn't about milk specifically, but it is about cows and the fact that, you know, they're so bad for the environment and everything. The dairy production is a part of this, and they're shooting themselves in the foot here. There are issues with the way we raise cows as a country. There is an issue with industrial agriculture, but this isn't addressing the issue with industrial agriculture. This is addressing the issue with cows. Like, what's your solution here? We need to kill every fucking cow and sheep in the world? Like, this is part of a natural cycle. They naturally release greenhouse gases the same way plants naturally absorb CO2. It's interesting to me that cows aren't considered a net zero creature because lots of things are. Biodiesel, for example, is considered net zero emissions because all of the greenhouse gases that it releases are gases that would have been absorbed by the growing of the plant that created the biodiesel. It's interesting to me that cows aren't considered the same, and the solution would be genocide of all of them. Is that what we're advocating for? Meat is murder because you're killing animals, so let's kill all the cows? What are we talking about? And while it's not a big part of the current, battle over milk, it is part of the battle over cows, which is included. And then when you have environmentalists trying to advocate for better farming techniques, right? They're not saying we need to get rid of cows. Well, you'd think they weren't saying we need to get rid of cows. They're pointing out the problems with the industrial agriculture. They're not saying we need to stop eating meat. They're saying we have a problem with industrial agriculture. Like this article, Food Waste in Meat Production, Historical Trends and Future Solutions. Meat waste is a pressing issue, with 23% of global meat production lost or wasted annually. The problem is that this article is advocating for lab-grown meat as an alternative. That is not healthier. I don't want lab-grown meat. I don't want that shit. I want more natural. More natural. And from an environmentalist standpoint, you should advocate for more natural because natural is good for the environment. The problem is that we are doing things that are unnatural. It's just crazy to me that an article that appears to be from an environmentalist standpoint is advocating for AI. And it even points out the reason we're facing this problem. In the past, traditional livestock farming relied on smaller farms where animals grazed naturally and waste was repurposed as fertilizer. This created efficient, closed-loop systems with minimal waste. However, the industrialization of beef production in the late 19th century marked a major shift. Feedlots, improved processing methods, and advancements in packaging and distribution revolutionized the industry. That's the problem. The problem is industrial agriculture. Instead of advocating for going back to smaller farms that are more of a closed-loop system, that have less of an impact on the environment because cows are fucking natural, they're advocating for AI forecasts of demand, and they're advocating for lab-grown meat. We're not advocating for actually going back to methods that were good, that weren't harmful to the environment, and that ultimately were fucking healthier. That idea of more natural, more healthy, is what is fueling this milk battle. If climate activists want to be taken seriously by the general population, they need to stop focusing on shit like this. They need to be focusing on people's intervention and what people can do differently. Again, like I've said multiple times already, the problem with cows is the industrial agriculture. Even if you don't believe it's bad for the environment, it's still bad, especially if you don't believe it's bad for the environment. Then you know that the way they're raising these cows is horrible for your health. They're not healthy. You're not getting that health back when you eat them. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, you should be against industrial agriculture. And the solution to that problem is to go back to smaller farms
Less chemicals, healthier methods. That is the solution, but that's not what we're focusing on. Even the environmentalists who do make good points, who have things to say, who are correct, get drowned out because they're lumped in with the meat is murder people. Meat is murder, but not just of animals. This is the article that started it all. The new fight over raw milk explained. Almost a century ago, public health agencies began mandating that milk be pasteurized for human consumption. We've been fighting about it ever since. Many scientific studies have shown that the process of pasteurization, heating milk to 161 Fahrenheit for 15 seconds, and then rapidly cooling it, significantly kills off harmful bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and reduces the risk of transmitting foodborne illnesses. Those illnesses, including Listeria, E. coli, Salmonella, tuberculosis, and bird flu, can be fatal for children, the elderly, and immunocompromised people. Raw milk advocates steadfastly claim that pasteurization strips milk of beneficial bacteria and enzymes, but without evidence. Public health organizations, including the FDA and the CDC, say that claims of raw milk's unique nutritional benefits are unsupported. Again, back to what I was saying earlier. The Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control have an interest in milk, and so they're not really trustworthy per se, necessarily. And each study would have to be evaluated on its own to really come to a conclusion. One of the biggest pushes for pasteurization of milk came in the 1930s after the discovery that raw milk could transmit tuberculosis, which was killing a lot of babies. There was a pretty direct relationship between more and more places requiring pasteurization and infant mortality rates going down. And so after that, it was pretty clear to most people and most public health bodies that this was a good idea. That health aspect is basically the argument against raw milk. Raw milk is more likely to transmit foodborne illnesses, and that is a fact. It's undeniable. That is the truth. Like the article said, in the 1930s, the increase of pasteurization directly correlated to a decrease in infant deaths. But pasteurization is only one step of the process. The steps for processing milk into what you buy at the store is clarification, which is done using centrifugal force. It can be done just with filtration, but it's usually not. It's spinning it up, getting rid of all the bad bullshit. Then they separate the cream from the milk and they standardize the ratio. Whole milk isn't actually whole milk. It just meets a certain percentage of fat to milk ratio that's considered whole, because in nature things vary. The fat content will be different cow to cow and season to season, and there are lots of things that can impact the cream content within the natural milk. So they standardize the milk so that it's easier to, calculate how many calories are in it and all that sort of thing, just so that it's standard. This is whole milk. Then they pasteurize it, like it said in the article, heat it up to 161 Fahrenheit for 15 seconds, cool it back down. This is what kills off the bacteria and the reason why you're not getting tuberculosis. Then they homogenize the milk, where they take it and they push it through a small tube at high pressure, and they blast up all the little pieces of fat so that the fat distributes evenly throughout all of the milk. This gives it an even texture and prevents the cream from separating. This is why you can't really make butter or cheeses with milk you get at the store. It's been homogenized so that it's more consistent and better for some reason. This is the process that I think is most interesting because it is the one that I like the least, and it's also a purely mechanical process, which before researching this video, I assumed there was some chemical somewhere that homogenized it. But no, it's mechanical. They just bust that shit up. When I think of raw milk, and I think most people, when they think of raw milk, they think of the cream separating. They think of something specific, natural milk. But you can have clarified and standardized and homogenized milk that hasn't been pasteurized and it's still raw. because it hasn't been cooked. After this homogenization process, sometimes they'll like add vitamins and bullshit and bolster it, and then they package it up and sell it. Again, the only thing that makes it raw or not is whether or not it was pasteurized. Now, this raw milk thing has really become prominent, and it's center stage within culture because of RFK Jr., who is a big advocate for raw milk. Donald Trump got him on his team, and after they won the election, people assumed, and I think RFK even claimed, that they're going to make raw milk great again. They're going to make America healthy again. A lot of people are behind the Make America Healthy Again movement, and raw milk is a part of that. The problem is that Donald Trump lied about pretty much everything he ran on. If you actually think about it, he has lied about pretty much everything. He ran on releasing the Epstein list, which he's released most of the Epstein files, but to my knowledge, there has been no client list released, and nobody has been locked up. He ran on deporting illegal immigrants, and he's on track to get beat in illegal immigrant deportations by Obama. He ran on no new wars, and one of the first things he did was bomb Iran. And the Make America Healthy Again movement has gotten almost nothing done. He's rolled back regulations against harmful chemicals being allowed to be used in industrial farms. And it seems raw milk is another thing that he is going back on, with him now, as you saw in the beginning, championing whole milk instead of raw milk, with most mentions of raw milk just totally disappearing. So the contenders in the current war against milk is the anti-raw milk crowd, who is just basically saying, hey, this shit has a way higher chance of making you sick. Why are we advocating for this? What are we doing? Then you have the anti-cow environmentalists, who are just trying to kind of get rid of cows in general. And then you have the pro-raw milk crowd, who is saying, hey, natural is healthier. I don't like the way this is. I think they're lying to us. Can't we just make these decisions for ourselves? Can't we just make these decisions? It's my body. Why can't I drink something that might be more harmful? And that side is taking a big hit because the MAGA movement, the Maha movement, kind of dropped out of the war, it sounds like. Here's the thing. All three of these groups of people want the same fucking thing. They just want people to be healthier. The environmentalists want the world to be healthy so that humans can keep living for a long, long time. The anti-raw milk crowd just wants people to drink shit that won't make you sick. And the pro-raw milk crowd just wants to be able to drink shit that's more natural because it's healthier. It all comes from health. People want to be healthier. And the real problems aren't even about whether or not you're drinking raw milk. The problem is that the food is unhealthy before it even gets fucking processed. Here's how it works for cows. We grow corn. We grow corn monoculture, meaning that we are not rotating this crop. It's getting planted in the same spot every year. Crops need specific nutrients, and rotating the crops, changing what you're growing in each area, replenishes the ground's nutrients, because one crop will need some, one crop will need another. So you rotate them around so that the soil isn't harmed, it's not drained of its resources, it's not drained of all of its nutrients. And then you get healthier ground, healthier plants. That's not what they're doing. It's monoculture growing. They're just growing the corn. And then they're supplementing the ground with all kinds of fertilizers and chemicals, things that are ultimately bad, so that the ground has the nutrients that the corn needs. The corn has been genetically modified so that it can withstand Roundup, a chemical that kills everything it touches except corn and animals, including people, according to Monsanto. These corn seeds are fucking neon in color. It's crazy to see. But not just that, they've been genetically modified so that the sugar content is way higher, so that they're more appealing, so the color is uniform. They have been modified beyond recognition into something that's more appealing. This corn is harvested, ground up, and fed to cows, which corn is not naturally a part of a cow's diet, so they're not even supposed to be having this. The corn has been poisoned. You think that somehow all these chemicals they're spraying on these plants don't make it into the plant? They definitely do. So they're taking the poison food and they're feeding it to the cow, which the cow shouldn't be eating in the first place. Then what, you think that that poison from the food isn't going into the cow? It is. But also they're malnourished and unhealthy. They just fatten up and get really sick because they're not supposed to be eating that. They get supplemented with chemicals and just other monoculture vitamins where it's like this one vitamin, not natural by any fucking means, fed to the cow. And just a slurry of shit to make it so they don't keel over and die from having an unbalanced diet. And then that goes into the food, into the end product. Then you're taking the milk, which is not healthy because it's not from a healthy cow, because the cow didn't get their regular diet. And the diet they did get was poison because they're poisoning the ground that they're growing the food in. And then you're pasteurizing it, you're homogenizing it, you're bolstering it with other vitamins where you're just adding one vitamin or whatever without the other things that you're supposed to have to be able to actually absorb the vitamin. And the end product is something that's like not even fucking food. The milk from these industrial farms is not healthy, even when it's raw. Fucking maybe especially if it's raw because of the disgusting process of the whole thing. The whole system has bastardized nature. It's fucking insane. And the thing is that the solutions are just kind of fucking unattainable. You know, it's fun to talk about, and it would be really cool if we could solve these problems, but we can't. What we need is better farming methods. We need smaller farms. We need to get rid of industrial farming. If we rotate our crops, if we don't use all these chemicals, and if we feed the cows what they actually are meant to be fed, if we let them be animals, they will produce healthier products. Then just process the shit less. Totally unprocessed milk would be a fucking nightmare widespread. Unpasteurized milk would be a fucking nightmare on a large scale because it doesn't last as long in transport, and you know, it just has a shorter shelf life, and it can get people sick. It's got a way higher rate of getting people sick, so it's just not feasible on a large scale. But there's more than one way to cook the milk. The current process of pasteurization that's been brought up a couple of times is high temperature, short time pasteurization. They heat the milk up to 161 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds, and then they rapidly cool it. This kills off basically all the bacteria. The next step up is ultra pasteurization, where they heat the milk up to 280 degrees Fahrenheit for about 2 seconds. This process is basically not used. The milk isn't sterile. It's not like cooked in a sterile facility or whatever for the ultra pasteurization process, so it's not really used. There's not much point to it. Then you also have the ultra high temperature pasteurization process, where you heat the milk up to about 275, 280 for about 2 seconds, but in a sterile environment. This is the milk you see that's shelf stable for months. It's still milk. They just cook the fuck out of it. It's basically sterile, and it can last months at room temperature as long as it's not opened. And they sell, you can find that. I've drank it before. It's fucking weird. Yeah, it's fucking weird. But then there's low temperature, long time pasteurization. They heat the milk up to 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes. This method is not currently used, but it was one of the first widespread pasteurization techniques, the one they were using in the 30s. That's what this is. A direct correlation between this and less dead babies. This process retains the milk's flavor and nutrition. It barely alters it. Basically, all it does is kill off the harmful bacteria. If all you do to the milk is filter it to get like the shit out, I mean, you definitely should filter it. It's coming from a fucking wild animal. And then low temperature, long time pasteurize it. It has a shorter shelf life than high temperature, short time. It won't last as long in transport, which is why they don't really do it. But you end up with a healthier result. And if you don't homogenize it, and this applies to high temperature, short time also, but I mean, like it seems better to me to do the long time method. If you don't homogenize it, you can still make cheese, make butter, make any dairy product you want, even after it's been pasteurized. It'll still do whatever you want it to do. It's just got a significantly lower chance of giving you, you know, fucking tuberculosis, of killing your babies. And it's retaining its original flavor and nutrition. I don't see much of a downside to that other than, you know, you are cooking it a little bit. Is raw milk better than processed milk? Here's my analogy. I don't think anyone would argue that if you had a chicken breast that was raw and you were sure that it didn't have any bacteria in it, it would not get you sick. You were sure it wouldn't get you sick, but it's a piece of raw chicken. I don't think anybody would say that that piece of raw chicken is less healthy than a chicken nugget, than a dinosaur nugget. That's how I feel about raw milk. After doing research for this video, I would like it if you could buy milk at the store that was pasteurized at 145 degrees for 30 minutes, and it wasn't homogenized, and it wasn't standardized, and it wasn't bolstered. It was just filtered and pasteurized at a low temperature and then sold to you. That's what I would like. If I had my own milk cow, I would probably just drink it raw after I filtered it, most likely. So where do I stand now? I am wholeheartedly an advocate for more natural options. Nature functions, and it functions well. The things we're supposed to be eating are natural, but we cook our chicken. I don't necessarily see a problem with pasteurization if it's done in a better way than we currently do it, in a way that alters it less. But I also understand why people prefer raw. I also understand why people would want super fucking pasteurized. I disagree with them, but I understand it. But anyway, that's what I think. Let me know what you thought of this video. If you liked it, drop a like and let me know what you thought down in the comments. If you didn't like it, drop a dislike and let me know what you thought down in the comments. But either way, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.